welcome to a Gilded Age village. My name is Zachary Veith, and I'm a historic interpreter here at Staatsburg State Historic Site, the Gilded Age home of Ruth Livingston Mills and her husband, Ogden Mills. This series of videos will take us beyond the estate walls and into the nearby hamlet of Staatsburg. The Mills family and those living in the hamlet had a close relationship for generations, and we continue that tradition today as we partner with the Staatsburg Library, using their impressive collection of historic photographs and postcards to present this series of videos. Now today, we'll be looking at the businesses that made the tiny village of Staatsburg a flourishing town of business and industry over 100 years ago. We'll focus on three areas of the village today: the ice harvesting industry, Hughes department store, and the Four Corners. For generations, one of the most important industries in Staatsburg was ice harvesting. 10-inch ice blocks were taken out of the Hudson River and transported to ice houses in the days before refrigeration. Starting in January and lasting 6 to 8 weeks, ice harvesting provided employment for local farmers and estate workers during the winter months. The most successful ice company in Staatsburg was the Knickerbocker Ice Company, located near the river. In 1897, they employed 200 local men harvesting 25,000 tons of ice in Staatsburg alone. In comparison, the Mills private ice house was right on the river too, holding about 500 tons of ice. In Staatsburg, residents were not only employed to harvest the ice, but some even made the tools to do so. The Staatsburg Ice Tool Factory, likely the most productive and widely known operation in the village, was located on River Road, where the Foster Flooring Store is currently located. Founded in 1870 by German immigrant J.H. Bodenstein, the J.H. Bodenstein Ice Tool Factory manufactured a range of ice harvesting tools. When he passed, his eldest sons, George and Henry, took control of the company, and under their leadership, it grew to a national scale, with 15 to 20 men working 6 days a week. Yet, the brothers soon parted ways, George retaining the Bodenstein factory, while Henry started the Staatsburg Ice Tool Factory in 1888. George's operation was never as successful, and the building was demolished to make room for the railroad tracks in 1913. Henry's factory, on River Road, flourished. Electricity was installed in 1910 to much fanfare, but by all accounts, it was an awfully hot place to work, full of furnaces for the machines, with everything run by leather pulleys. Townfolk say you could hear the operations throughout the village when the doors were open. When it was destroyed by a fire in 1920, Ogden Mills had his carpenters rebuild the factory, and it was that building that you see today. And if you're wondering, a sprinkler system was added 2 years later in 1922. Speaking of fire, the Mills were great supporters of the Staatsburg Fire Company, called the Dinsmore Hose Company, which is today part of the Roosevelt Fire District. We know of a gift of a handsome company banner from Ogden Mills in 1911, and after a 1904 fire in the mansion, Ruth told the firemen that they could get whatever they needed at a local store and have it charged to her. Later, she received a bill for $260, around the average yearly income for a laborer at the time. Upon investigation, she found it was a crowd of locals who heard of Ruth's offer to the firemen and ordered their own clothes and charged her account. Yet, the wealthy hostess simply paid the bill without complaint rather than cause any fuss with the townspeople. The firehouse is located at what was known as the Four Corners. As I mentioned earlier, Staatsburg at the turn of the century was a hub of business, boasting multiple hotels, restaurants, stores for every need, factories, gas stations. even its own town hall on Mulford Avenue, and a car dealership. Before Route 9 was built in 1932, this was the main road between New York City and Albany. Several businesses flourished accommodating those travelers. And the Four Corners was the bustling downtown. The intersection of Old Post Road, River, and Mulford was known as the Four Corners. It even had a stoplight to ease congestion, if you can imagine that today. Across from the firehouse, the River and Post restaurant, formerly Portofino's, has always been a food service establishment or hotel of some sort, the last remaining in a long list of inns, bars, hotels, and restaurants once populating Old Post Road. It's believed the mill's French chef, Jacques Negre, lived there for a period as well. Moving now one block north, every one of our oral histories mentions Hughes Department Store. At the turn of the century, it was the primary shop in the village where you could find almost anything you needed. Deli meats and food were downstairs. Household items like paint, raincoats, glassware, even appliances were upstairs. It's likely this is the spot mentioned earlier where Ruth told the firemen to go for supplies and ended up buying clothes for a crowd. Named for its founder, Miles Hughes, his son Edwin took over operations in 1903. Alan Borner later bought it from Edwin and operated a successful store. Then Ralph Osterhout oversaw a deli and lunch counter here. Until a few years ago, the original Hughes sign was still on top of the building. As the main department store in town, it was a frequent stop for the mill's employees and their neighbors alike. One oral history says Ruth even visited this store, taking local kids inside and buying them rubbers if they didn't have any for the winter. However, most of the food served at Mrs. Mill's elaborate parties was sourced right from the estate's farms and greenhouses. Sadly, business dropped as the main highway through Staatsburg was rerouted onto the new Route 9 in the 1930s. Traffic slowed, ice harvesting ceased by about the 1940s, and the population started to dwindle. Next time, we'll be looking at the daily lives of residents of Staatsburg over 100 years ago. So, stay tuned.